Creepy Battenberg.
The world may be full of strange creatures and entities that are not yet known to science. Take for instance the story of Black Shuck, a 7-foot black dog with blazing red eyes that terrified areas of southeast England almost half a millennium ago. It was during a thunderstorm in August 1577 when it is said that this creature burst into Blythburgh Church in Suffolk, killing 2 of the congregation. It left scorched claw marks on the doors, scorch marks visible to this day. There have been many other sightings of strange creatures down the years, from Bigfoot to the Loch Ness Monster and the Mothman. In our second story tonight, we deal with just such a creature, one that terrifies a boy left home alone. But first up, we have a story where you will hear how a strange entity troubles a young woman day and night. Pour yourself a glass of wine and rest your feet as you listen to Scary True Tales. Story number 1. I was in my early 20s when I started seeing a face reflected in mirrors. The first time I saw it, I was in my bedroom. I was half asleep, and it could have been my imagination, but every time I woke up through the night, I seemed to be looking at that mirror, and each time there was this small white face looking at me, and it was sort of smiling. It left me feeling a little disturbed, the same way that a really intense nightmare will. I got into my car to go to work, and straight away I felt like I was being watched. I looked in my rear view, and there in the back of the car looking right at me was that small white face. I turned my music on loud and hit the road trying to ignore the face and the feeling of being watched. Music is great for taking your mind off things. I got stuck behind the school bus that I got stuck behind nearly every morning, and I checked my mirror. Thankfully, I didn't see it this time. I later found out that my grandmother was very ill, and I decided that it may have been some sort of harbinger of trouble. The thing was though, even after my grandmother recovered and was well again, it seemed to stay around. At night, I would see it in the mirror in my room, and during the day it would be in the mirror in my car. I reasoned that it could have been because the mirrors were dirty, so I buffed and polished them and made sure there were no streaks. It was no use whatsoever. The face would continue to appear in the mirrors. At this point in my life, I would suffer from intense depressions that would last weeks at a time, and it was at these points that I saw the face most regularly. It seemed to become clearer as time went on, but you couldn't describe it as a human face. Rather, it was a white mist that resembled a human face. One morning, I had seen it again on my way to work. Our kitchen there looks onto the parking lot, and it got to the point that I didn't want to go in there because I felt like it was watching me from my car. One of my most terrifying experiences was when I drove to my friend's house one Friday night. It was dark, and the face was clearer than it had ever been. I was incredibly relieved when I got there, and had a few glasses of wine to calm my anxiety. I stopped seeing it when I got together with a new boyfriend. I was so excited as I had been in love with him for a long time, and found out he had felt the same. I put it down to being happy, as I always saw it most when I was depressed or worried. I started to think that maybe I had been crazy or something, until one night we both saw it. We had been enjoying some time in my bedroom. Being a new couple, we spent an awful lot of time in there. We were having some pillow talk, and I could feel myself getting sleepy. The mirror was on top of my closet at the back right of my room, and there in the mirror was the face again. I told my boyfriend to look at the mirror and tell me if he could see anything. He went on to describe the face exactly as I was seeing it. He was very interested in the paranormal and things like that, so he stood up and put his hand exactly where the face was reflected from. As he did this, we both watched the mirror, and the face faded away before disappearing. He got back into bed, and that's when the face slowly reappeared. He got up again and asked it to leave. It kept coming back, and in the end he told it to leave, even swearing at it. It disappeared and stayed away this time, but he still took the mirror down off the closet and threw a shirt over it. I told him more about it after this, and he suggested that it might have been some sort of thought form, born out of my negative feelings. Since then, I have never seen the face, but from time to time, when I am under stress, I still have the feeling that I am being watched. Story number 2. When I was a teenager, I was left alone one night. My mother had to work late, so I had the household to myself. I never had any problem staying on my own at night, but that all changed this one night. It started off just fine. I watched a little television and I had dinner whilst I watched, not knowing the terror that I would come face to face with. I was just sitting there watching my favourite show when I heard a noise. It sounded like clawing or scratching outside my door. At first, I shrugged it off and thought it was maybe a raccoon or a possum, but I was wrong. I continued watching my show when I heard the noise again, and it became louder. The more I ignored it, the louder it became, so I went to investigate the sound. I took a peek outside my window, and in my door, I saw a shadow across the yard. I thought then that it was just a dog or a wild animal or something, but as I looked closely, I noticed this was no mere animal. I stared at this creature moving around outside, and it began to draw closer and closer, and when it got close enough I got a good look. It had blood red eyes that seemed to stare right through me. Its teeth looked really sharp, and its fur was jet black. It had claws unlike anything I have ever seen, almost like spikes. We stared at each other for a bit before I realised I should lock the door, so it couldn't find a way in, and that's when I saw my door start to rattle and shake violently, as if it was trying to force it open. I slowly crept back to the door, softly and quietly so the monster couldn't hear me. I wish I hadn't looked back out. I noticed it was right there looking right at me. Only an inch of glass was separating us at this point. I was afraid for my life, not knowing if I would live or die. It breathed deeply onto the glass, and you could see the windows steaming up. As it stared at me, it ran its tongue across its lips. If this beast were to get in, I felt sure it would kill and eat me. I was so relieved when my mum pulled up in the front yard. It snarled at me before darting off, whisking its tail behind him. I watched it run into the woods and was amazed my mum never saw him. I told her about what I witnessed and she thought I was just making it up, chalking it down to the imagination of a teenager being left alone at home. Until this very day, I have never saw the beast again, and I never wanted to. It was like something out of a nightmare. I would sometimes hear a strange growling coming from the woods, and it didn't sound like any dog or wolf or other wild animal that I know of. I do wonder if it was the creature that I saw that night. Hello everyone, it's Uncle Creepy here. Thanks again for watching Scary True Tales. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, don't forget to give it the thumbs up and subscribe so that you don't miss out on more. If you have had anything scary happen to you like in tonight's episode, or anything else that might have happened, then please get in touch at marzipanhorror23@gmail.com to have your story featured on the show.